The kingdom wrapped in fog. Come closer to the fire, wandering soul. The night is long, and the stars seem distant tonight. That makes it the perfect night for an old story. A story about a kingdom that hid no warnings. A kingdom that refused to remember. A kingdom swallowed by fog. Now most stories begin with a warning. This one is no different. If you ever find yourself traveling alone and see a colorless fog rolling over distant hills, turn around, do not hesitate, do not investigate, do not satisfy your curiosity, do not listen to the part of your heart that whispers, just a little farther. For that is how all foolish journeys begin. And I should know, the allure of mystery shines stronger than a fog could keep hidden away. Unless you're like me, and an adventure calls louder than a reason. Long ago, before the world has turned and changed an endless amount of times, I traveled the land, following legends that probably were not true. I possessed little worth speaking of, a worn sword, a dented shield, a cloak better suited for a rainy day than glory. I was not a famous knight, no songs had ever been written about me, no kingdom knew my name, and yet it was I who chose to enter the fog, and by chance was lucky enough to find a way through. At the time the story seemed impossible. Travelers spoke of a kingdom called Boletaria, a prosperous land once ruled by a wise king, a place of shining towers and fertile valleys, a place where merchants grew wealthy and children laughed safely behind stone walls. Then came the fog, not an ordinary fog, not the sword that settles upon rivers in autumn. This fog was alive. It flowed like a living tide. It swallowed roads, villages, entire armies. It diffused reason and called forth demons. At first people dismiss the tales. People often do. It is easier to doubt a horror than to face it. But then refugees began arriving. Nobles, common folk, then soldiers, all carrying the same haunted look in their eyes, all telling the same impossible story. Boletaria was gone, consumed, and no one who entered returned. Naturally, I went anyway. The fog waited at the edge of the kingdom, silent, patient, like a great beast pretending to sleep. The trees vanished first, then the sky, then the road beneath my feet. Soon there was only whiteness stretching endlessly in every direction. I could hear my own breathing, the soft scrape of boots against stone, the beating of my heart. Nothing else. No birds, no insects, no wind, no life. And then something moved. A shape, impossibly big shape for anything I've seen before. Ancient, hungry, watching. I remember drawing my sword. I remember telling myself I was brave. The creature taught me otherwise. The battle lasted only moments, if only one can even call it that. Is being acknowledged by the creature of power can be considered a battle? I struck, trying to be brave in face of impossible. It laughed. I defended. And before I could understand what had happened, darkness swallowed everything. Most stories end there. Most lives would. But mine did not. Instead, I awoke somewhere else. A place beyond the world. A place beyond death. A place they called Nexus. The Nexus looked as though someone had taken a cathedral and made it into a tower stretching to the skies. Great arches stretched upward in darkness. Ancient stone bridges crossed empty air. Countless candles flickered like distant stars. And at its center stood a vast monument of stone. I could not tell whether the place was a prison, a sanctuary, or a dream. Perhaps it was all three. Stranger still, I was not alone. An old blacksmith worked beside a forge whose fire never seemed to diminish. Warriors sat quietly near forgotten stairways. Some prayed, some slept, some simply stared into the distance. All of them carried the same look, the look of people trapped between hope and despair. I later learned they were called soulbound, though at the time I understood only one thing. None of them seemed surprised to see a dead person walking. It was then I met the maiden in black. At first I mistook her for another lost soul. She wore dark robes. A fire burned softly at the top of her staff. Her eyes were hidden beneath a veil of wax. And though she appeared young, she carried herself with the quiet certainty of someone older than kingdoms. When she spoke, her voice echoed strangely through the vast chamber, not loud, simply impossible to ignore. Thou seekest the soul power, dost thou not? I did not understand her question. Truthfully, I understood very little at that point, yet somehow she seemed unsurprised by my confusion. The maiden explained what death had failed to accomplish. My body had perished, but my soul remained trapped. The Nexus had claimed me, and until the curse was broken, there would be no true escape, no true rest. I had become one more prisoner of the struggle to save the world. There are moments in every life when fear should convince a person to slow down, or maybe even to turn back. This was one of them. Unfortunately, I've never been especially wise, so instead of fleeing, of hiding, of standing still, I asked how to continue. The maiden merely nodded, as though she had expected that answer all along. Then she pointed toward a row of ancient archstones. 6 stood within the Nexus, 5 weathered monuments, and 1 that had crumbled. Each carved from stone older than memory, each connected to a different corner of the doomed kingdom. Most sat dormant, silent, sleeping, but one still glowed faintly. The archstone of the small king, the path to Boletaria, the path back into the fog, the path I chose. The world beyond the archstone greeted me with fire. Not metaphorical fire, actual fire. Buildings burned, smoke darkened the sky, and the once great gates of Boletaria were shut close. The kingdom looked less like a nation and more like the aftermath of a terrible storm. Soldiers patrolled the battlements, yet something about them felt wrong. Their armor was rusted, their movements stiff, their eyes empty, like puppets dancing after their strings had been already snapped. They attacked without hesitation, and so I learned my first lesson. The kingdom was no longer interested in saving itself. On the contrary, sanity seemed to be seeked out like a wild beast that everyone wanted to claim. The road beyond the gates became a gauntlet of ruined courtyards, shattered towers, and desperate battles. Crossbow bolts rained from high walls, flaming barrels stumbled from above, hidden soldiers waited behind doors. More than once I wondered if the kingdom itself was trying to kill me. More than once I nearly succeeded in dying again. Yet, little by little, I pressed onward, not because I believed victory awaited, but because every road behind me had vanished. Only forward remained. And somewhere beyond those walls, beyond the burning castle city, beyond the gathering darkness, something was waiting, something ancient, something tied to the fog itself. I did not know its name, not yet, but I could feel its presence, like thunder before a storm, like a bell ringing beneath the earth, calling, waiting, watching. And once the first gates were open, it invited me in for a battle of many with spears and shields. Eventually, after learning how useful the fire can be against enemy with no armor, I returned to Nexus. The maiden awaited me, as though she had known all along that I would return. Or perhaps she knew that the soul does not know how to stop. Then she spoke of a being called the Monumental, an ancient keeper of forgotten truths, one who knew why the fog had come, one who knew how the kingdom had fallen, one who might know how it could yet be saved. So I climbed, up winding stairways, past endless candles, into the highest reaches of the Nexus. And there I found them, tiny figures seated upon cushions, silent, motionless, as though centuries had passed without a single breath. For a moment I believed them all to be statues. Then a slightless candle flicker drew my attention. One, only one of countless others, was lit, and so only one monumental seemed to remain. The story truly began at that moment, but that, wandering soul, is a tale for another night. Thank you for listening this far. I hope we will meet again beyond fog and time.